LEGO will never make a physical controller for their powered-up Technic sets. The #1 complaint about the new Control Plus system is the lack of a physical controller. Most Technic fans, including myself, would love to see a controller. However, Powered Up is fundamentally different from power functions. It is essentially a combination of mindstorms and power functions. It's like the old power functions motors have maintained a similar form factor while also introducing a built-in rotation sensor. Internal rotation sensors in motors have been around since the NXT, and external rotation sensors were available in the RCX era. You may be asking, how does this impact the ability to add a physical controller? Well, because the new motors are able to measure their position, many Technic sets rely on motors moving in a sophisticated way in order to control everything properly. For example, the big excavator of 2019 has strangely connected joints and the actuators overlap. As a result, in order to move the second half of the arm, the bucket also needs to move. When you're controlling the excavator from the app, you don't have to worry about the actuator stressing the arm, and the excavator does everything on its own. Well, it's actually your phone that does all of the processing in the Control Plus app. Your phone runs a specific set of commands, sends them to the hub, and the hub does only what it receives. This means that if the excavator came with a physical controller, it would not work with any other LEGO Technic set or any of your mocks, since the controller has to run that specific program for the excavator. One way to solve this issue is to have reprogrammable controllers, so that you can download a specific interface onto the controller. For example, if I need to use the 6x6 valve articulated hauler, I can just download the interface for the hauler, and if I need to use the same controller for the Cat D11 bulldozer, then I can just download the bulldozer's interface onto the remote. However, this would still require a compatible device, and, well, Control Plus would remain controversial. 3 of the most common movement types in LEGO Technic are continuous running, return to center steering, and 90-degree steps. 90-degree steps are crucial for distribution and transmission gearboxes, and are found in sets like the valve articulated hauler as well as the Cat D11 bulldozer. In Powered Up, there is no specific steering motor like there was in power functions. Instead, each motor has its own rotation sensor, and any of them can be programmed as you please, with the exception of the small medium motor. That means if we had just a basic proportional physical controller, it would not have return to center steering. I do have a solution to fix this problem. On the sides of each proportional slider, there could be 2 switches. One of them simply reverses the polarity, while the other one switches between continuous motion and return to center steering. If this switch is engaged, then the respective motor would essentially work like the power function servo. There is still one major problem with the proposed physical controller: 90-degree steps. With the current layout, it's impossible to do 90-degree steps unless you make a physical stepper mechanism, but those have their own problems. What if in the middle of the sliders we add 2 buttons as well as a third option for the switch that selects between 90-degree step mode, continuous motion, and steering? If the 90-degree step mode is selected, then the proportional slider does nothing, while the 2 buttons simply rotate the motor 90 degrees in the respective direction. And of course, this proposed physical controller would be stackable, just like the old power functions remote. You could switch the channels, which are color-coded, with the blue button. There would be up to 2 remotes connected to each hub with the same channel, and you could have as many hubs with different channels as you want. This still doesn't solve the issue of controller incompatibility with more complex sets like the excavator. With the physical controller, unless it's reprogrammable, it's practically impossible to control the excavator without having to worry about the actuators stressing each other. On top of that, if we have 7 or more motors in a single set, would it really be intuitive to stack up to 4 controllers next to each other? I don't think so. If LEGO released a physical controller right now, it would most likely be completely incompatible with the 42100 excavator. On top of that, even sets that seemingly have basic motor movements like the Cat D11 bulldozer actually shift in a really strange way in order to prevent it from jamming. So again, a reprogrammable controller would be required. For example, this LEGO Mindstorm Segway is programmed to be controlled with the Power Functions remote. The remote isn't actually connected to motor power. Instead, the remote changes some variables in the balance code so the Segway moves. This is similar to many Control Plus LEGO Technic sets. It's not simply just the slider being connected to motor power. There is a lot more that's going on in the controlling program. The Control Plus app allows Technic sets to be way more complex than simply having sliders be directly connected to motor power. If you're enjoying this video so far, and you would like to uncover all the secrets of LEGO Technic, such as why B models should return, the rarest gears, motors, and more, then make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. No pressure though. No pressure. If we assume that physical controllers cannot be tied down to a computer or smart device in any way, then that becomes a major problem. LEGO would need to produce a completely unique controller for every single new powered-up set. Furthermore, the unique controllers that LEGO supplied in their Control Plus sets would not be compatible with anything besides their one use case, including your own creations. Now, we can clearly see why LEGO has never bothered to add physical controllers to the powered-up Technic sets. I believe that when the transition from Power Functions to Powered Up first began in 2018, LEGO actually wanted to add physical controllers just like in Power Functions, since they included some of those in the trains. But soon after, when LEGO began working on more ambitious sets like the 4100 excavator, they quickly realized that a physical controller would not do the job. Smartphones have a ton of advantages over physical controllers, such as one-touch control, easy customization in the Powered Up app, and much more. LEGO could just easily go back to having more basic motor movement and have one basic controller for everything like in Power Functions, but at that point, Powered Up would be nothing more than just Power Functions with Bluetooth, and even inferior in many cases, such as the lack of stackable cables, extension cables, converter cables, the prices of components, and much more. If the sets featured the most basic type of motor movement, the insane price of the powered up motors would not be justified, and it would be mostly inferior to Power Functions. Furthermore, being able to have more complex movement like in LEGO Mindstorms in LEGO Technic sets allows them to be far more interesting. And now, LEGO really isn't limited by anything. Basic motor movement like in the Power Functions era would significantly limit LEGO to produce some groundbreaking sets. The reason why Powered Up seems inferior to Power Functions is because it was never a successor to Power Functions. Powered Up is essentially a robotic system, one that is much cheaper than Mindstorms, and as a result, easier to implement in Technic sets. The hub is $90 in comparison to $255 with LEGO Mindstorms. Pybricks even allows you to store a single Python program on the hub itself and have it run without a smartphone. LEGO Mindstorms never relied on purely physical controllers. The RCX, NXT, and EV3 all needed to be programmed by a computer, and while they could technically be used with a physical controller, it was never the primary feature, and most robots could not perform tasks with just a physical controller. Each one required a computer. Overall, a smartphone might actually be the best way to control the powered up models, as physical controllers also have tons of issues. On the other hand, despite these issues, physical controllers are guaranteed to last. Right now, it is extremely difficult to program the RCX system from a modern computer. Controllers will work no matter what, and are not subject to the lack of software support. I do think that LEGO should make physical controllers for the powered-up Technic models, but only if they're reprogrammable so that they're able to support the complex movements of many modern Technic sets. Please let me know down in the comments below. Do you think that LEGO should still make physical controllers for their Control Plus sets despite their issues, or is smartphone control the best way to go? This is your Unbreaking here, and I'll see you in the next one.